SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
An epidemic of people scratching their heads has broken out in the iGaming industry, and no, it is not lies. It's actually Brazil and how it continues to change the rules for the segment. Welcome to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and #1 player engagement platform. Today, we will discuss the latest news in the Brazilian market as both the central bank and lawmakers, with Finance Minister Fernando have been pushing new measures that impact directly on the operations of iGaming companies. I'm Fernando, Noodt, media manager for SBC and your host for today. And to discuss all things related to Brazil, of course, we are here with Ana Maria Menezes, business journalist for SBC Noticias Brazil. Ana, how are you today?
Hi, Fer. I'm actually more than okay, because I really enjoyed the topic that we're going to discuss today. I love politics. So I think we have a lot of interesting stuff to cover today. Pretty excited. Yeah,
absolutely excited. I think I shouldn't have mentioned lies because now my head is itching a little bit. You know, that happens. But together with us to give us the European perspective and analyze what's happening in Brazil also is Joe Streeter, editor for iGaming Expert. Joe, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Fer. And this is actually my my first post-Lisbon podcast, and I've got to put some praise on Ana because during Lisbon, I might catch her off guard with this, but during Lisbon, we were at the Legends game, and in a moment where me, Charlie, and James were all very starstruck, we were all a bit baffled. She stepped up to the plate. She interviewed the Van der Sars, the Michael Owens of the world, and she was thriving. So, yeah, I got to put some praise on Ana's interviewing skills in Lisbon.
Thank you. You're making me blush. But thank you. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Ana is always great. And that's why we have her here, because lawmakers have been pushing an increase on gaming taxation once again in Brazil. We have been discussing this on iGaming Daily before, but Ana, what is it this time?
We talked in the last episode about Brazil, that the provisional measure was officially vetoed. And that took a lot on the government. So honestly, the answer was bad in a way, because both Lula and the Minister of Finance, Fernando felt really betrayed in a way, because they had the okay from the deputies and from the senators as well, that they were going to pass the bill and vote for the approval. In the last minute, they decided they wouldn't do it. So taking all of this into account, the government's party, which is the Workers' Party, PT, they decided to strike back. And with one of those projects, we have 2 law projects right now that are aiming to raise the tax on GGR to 24%. So this is what we have. The latest news would be that, and it is backed by the government. So this is also important. The official law project was done by Lindbergh Farias. So he also works with PT, so the government's party. And the tax would be distributed with the overall tax burden on the firms of 27%. And that is, in his views, that would be lower than what is applied to the corporate profits in general. And that would be 34%. And also that the actual rate would be below practices in countries like France or Germany, which would be at 55% and 48%. So they're trying to sort of follow the international tax regime, but at the same time, again, we're talking about political retaliation. So it's hard to understand really where they're coming from with this decision. But yeah, again, a lot to cover. It's very political fit.
Is it interesting, Ana, that you kind of mentioned trying to follow other markets, because this kind of taxation turmoil isn't isolated to Brazil. We know how discussions in the UK are incredibly well documented around tax rises. Just last night, I was watching BBC Question Time, forgive the very British reference, but a mainstream political panel show in the UK. And the discussions weren't set to be around gambling, but gambling tax was brought up. We've seen discourse in France around tax hikes as well. I think the issue is this becomes a bit of a political football, but it's so sensitive and the stakes are incredibly high. We've seen what happened in the Netherlands where they pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually the tax rates went so high and it simply enabled the black market to thrive. So Brazil to be taking, as much as there is taxation turbulence right now, I think it's a good sign that they are looking to other big, more mature markets for guidance on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, I feel like it's good that they are looking at the mature markets, but what scares me a little bit, if I may use that word, is what conclusions they will take from that observation, because sometimes they will be like, hey, in the UK, they're doing this. In the Netherlands, they did that. And maybe they just look at what they did, but not the consequences. So if the decisions in those countries eventually led to a growth of the black market, and Brazil doesn't take that into account, I feel like there's a danger that they might commit the same mistakes as they did in Europe.
And not only that, I also believe that the proportion is different. We have a market for more than 200 million people. So it's the implications, like the bad decision or the wrong decision, the impact that we were going to see in the whole country. Yes, we also have to take that into account. So those changes, how they impact the actual people living in the country. Because again, this is where I'm worried. I worried about the people in the country who are paying the taxes, who are trying to live their lives in the best way and to get a good enough money at the end of the month to pay the bills and have a nice life. So in the end, this is what we have to question. How are those decisions impacting those people? But yeah.
It's not just market size, Anna, as well, that it's also trends, it's different sports, it's the economic climate. So a copy-paste approach from other markets simply won't work. It has to be nuanced to the Brazilian market. You're right to raise that point.
Yeah, and this measure is, or this proposal is being backed by Fernando who's probably the most important minister in the Lula's cabinet. So does it mean that this measure or this proposal actually has a bigger chance to pass, or is it the same scenario as the previous one?
Okay, let's put into perspective here. He was the one behind the provisional measure, and that tanked bad. So this says a lot. I mean, it's not only on his hands, and they have to cave to other parties' interests in order to get the approvals. So again, it's a football field, as Joe mentioned. He cannot do it by himself. And the fact that he's sort of like approving this doesn't mean much if they don't have if they're not backed by the Congress, which is something that the government is right now trying to remediate. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. I know that a bit later on, so I'm not going to spoil the next questions.
Okay, so we have a lot more to discuss about Brazil, but right now we're going to do a very quick ad break, and we will be right back to discuss what's going on in the South American giant.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
And we're back with more iGaming Daily to discuss what's going on in Brazil after a new tax increase proposal was introduced this week. So a lot going on in the country. We thought that we had already passed that stage, but it's still some changes to the regulations in Brazil. So, Joe, I want to hear your perspective, your European perspective, on how these sudden changes to the Brazilian rules may impact on companies looking to invest in Brazil. Because, of course, Brazil got this new regulatory framework back in January, and we're already talking about a lot of changes, like several changes, not only one thing, like taxes and payments and all different things. So do you think this change of rules, the sudden changes in the rules, can impact on companies looking to invest in Brazil?
It's a great question, Fer. It's a really good question. It's a tricky one as well. I think companies would have anticipated some fluctuation and some changes in the market. Yeah, they would have known that there would have been a shifting of this framework. The market is going to evolve rapidly. I think the Brazilian market as well. I mean, there was so much furore around its opening. And there is still so much excitement around the Brazilian market. What I would say is with things that have happened in India and in Thailand, there is an extra level of sensitivity from operators around political turbulence in markets and being adjusted to the political climate and political volatility potentially having an impact on gambling framework. That there is an extra sensitivity around that. And I think there will be an extra level of caution, and this type of kind of political back and forth will bring a level of trepidation to operators that are really looking to go all in on the Brazilian market.
Yeah, and I mean, international operators definitely need assistance or need help from the local people to better understand all this political turmoil, all these political changes. And Ana, you actually have been talking to some people in Brazil about that specific issue. So what's your take on how the Brazilian companies have to approach foreign investors to assist them as they arrive in the country, and so the Brazilians don't lose those business opportunities?
This is a topic that, of course, we cannot cover in just one answer, which is why I talked to some lawyers. So we have the plural here and lawyers from Brazil, from other Latin countries, and also from the UK. And we're going to discuss this further in the next SBC Leaders issue in Rio. So please check that out once it's live. But to answer your question with sort of like with a summary, first of all, if the operators decided to come to Brazil when we don't even have the final audit results, this is also sort of like a bet. They placed a bet on this country, and they also need to be aware of the risks. And this is something that we have a lot with betting itself. So they need to be aware of the risks that comes when you just decide to enter a country with no background of taxation on sports betting, when we don't have a regulation specific that is before 2018, which was, again, not even perfect. So again, a new market, there's bound to be some changes. And of course, those changes are very political. And again, I bring another scenario into this. Next year, we have elections, and we don't have sort of like mayor elections. We have the presidential election. We have the Chamber of Deputies election. We have the Senate's elections. So we're going to have a lot of changes, and those guys want to stay in power. They want to advocate for what they want. So this is the place where the chess pieces are moving a lot. Again, another factor to be taken into consideration. So when Brazilians are sort of advocating for the country or helping those foreign companies, we need to lay down the foundation and say, okay, so this is what you're going to face. This is the political environment that you're going to face when you enter Brazil. And the political environment can change the regulation. It can change the financial system. It can change, as we've seen, the provisional measures. It has changed the taxation. So being aware of that, of course, doesn't change the shock of, okay, so we're raising from 12% to 18%. What does that mean? When it's a foreign company looking at that, they might be scared. Us Brazilians, we are used to that. And not used to that as in like, oh, poor guys, they're so used to changes. No, each country has their own sort of like particularities. Brazil has its own. So just as Joe mentioned, India, Thailand, the UK, the discussion is different in each country. Here is just bigger because we're in the beginning of the market, the regulated market, and also because we have we don't have an actual example of the same size of Brazil, of the same landscape as Brazil. So, of course, we're going to have some issues as well. And this was the opinion of the lawyers, the Latin American lawyers. They mentioned that. So that they need to be aware of that, and that if they're sort of like, okay, I don't know if I should put my fee there if I should actually go to Brazil. Wait to the end of the year when you have the results, the audit results, when you have the actual proof of what the market brought as revenue, but not only revenue, it's like growth as well. But you cannot go into a market that is completely new and about to have changes and complain about some changes. Of course, some yes, and it's completely normal. But there needs to be sort of like a balance there. Otherwise, it's just not fair. At least I believe, and Joe, be more open to sort of like disagree or to compliment. But at least this is my view as a Brazilian who's very used to this environment.
Yeah, no, Anna, it's a really interesting point, and it kind of reminds me of something I was discussing yesterday on an SBC webinar around whether it's better to be first to market or whether it's better to kind of step back and let others enter the market first, let mistakes be made, and then enter the market and have a real understanding. And I kind of raise you an example from Thailand as well. I mean, this time 12 months ago, it seemed that Thailand was destined for land-based casino regulation. Operators were kind of licking their lips at the potential of having a footprint in Thailand and having a casino in Thailand, one of the biggest tourist hotspots in Asia. And they set up bases there. They really moved to the market. And political turmoil outside of gambling, but political turmoil saw that bill fall down and well documented. And now operators have bases there, and they're kind of lingering, waiting to see if the regulation could come back or if it won't come back. But they've got these bases in Thailand, and there's really no sign or no immediate sign of the regulation of Thailand casinos. So, yeah, it's an interesting case study of whether it is best to be first to market, or sometimes it is better to kind of hold back and to let mistakes be made and to see a market evolve a little bit and then to go in and to also gain that local knowledge. Like you say, Anna, that's a massive factor as well. Because sometimes regulation on paper is one thing, but when you actually have to implement the regulation, it's a far more challenging prospect.
I think just adding to that, and I 100% agree with you, there's also, when we're looking at the landscape of a country, Brazil is also facing a lot of other, not issues precisely, but we have other matters that are sort of more important. In a way, when I say more important, meaning it directly impacts the lives of people who are living here, of Brazilians. So these are usually they're put first. So even with things taking a longer time, you also need to understand what is being discussed in a country. So as you mentioned, with Thailand, they just decided to put at least a stop to it right now, just to see how it goes. What are they actually looking right now? What are the priorities? So I also think they need to take that into account 100%.
And there's more movement in Brazil as a recent central bank resolution was introduced over the last few days and has a direct impact on the industry. So, Anna, what is this new anti-fraud measure about and how does it affect operators in Brazil?
So this new norm says that financial institutions need to reject transactions that involve accounts that are suspicious of fraud. So that includes deposits and also withdrawals accounts, prepaid as well, savings accounts. And this requires those institutions to directly communicate the owner of the account about that. So we have, again, another layer of protection that could be seen as too much protection in a way. And this was said by Carolina Franchini. She's the first Latin American specialized in open finance in Oxford. So she's very knowledgeable about it. A great person to talk about this. And she says that this affects directly the central part of the sportsbook operation, which is an easy and good payment system. So again, another layer of protection, but how protected can you be without affecting the customer experience? So this is the question behind this and a question for operators.
Yeah, Joe, you used to be editor for Payment Experts. So what do you think about open finance as a potential solution to some of these strict restrictions to the payment segment in Brazil?
Yeah, so open finance and open banking are essentially the same thing, right? And we had a big discourse in the UK a few years ago when the white paper discussions were happening around the impact of open banking and how open banking can affect kind of safer gambling and can improve player profiling. There's one key downside. One of the downsides is, you privacy and stuff like that. But the other key downside that it plays into, or the other, not downside, but the hurdle, I guess, is it really requires mass adoption. And as you mentioned, Brazil is such a widely populated country. It doesn't work if 30% of the player base is signed up to open finance. It requires a significant number of players to be signed up for it to be effective. And that's a challenge we had in the UK. So yeah, the other side of open finance is it's not really a player safety factor, but it improves the player journey massively. I mean, we've seen the speed of withdrawals and the speed of transactions improve because of open banking in the UK. But for it to really have a tangible impact on player safety, it requires mass adoption. And I don't have nuanced knowledge of the Brazilian market, but I would anticipate that would be a challenge, especially with so many players.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on what's going on in Brazil with this whole open finance payment restrictions and all that. But Dana, you wanted to add anything else?
Oh yeah, just a quick summary. If you guys want to read more about this resolution and also what the specialist Carolina Franchini has to say about it and how it can help your operation, just check SBC Noticias Brazil. If you're not from Brazil, if you don't speak Portuguese, the translation button could be just enough for that. It's a very interesting content, and you guys should definitely check that out.
Or you can sign up for Portuguese lessons, because Brazil is it's already not the next big thing. It's already the big thing.
You teased me then, Anna. I thought you were going to send English speakers over to iGaming Expert, but you kept them on site anyway. I thought you were sending them to us.
She's working that retention time on SBC Noticias Brazil. She doesn't want to take people elsewhere. But thank you very much, Joe. And make sure you subscribe to both newsletters, iGaming Expert and SBC Noticias Brazil, and all the other SBC Media newsletters. Thank you very much, Anea McDonald, for producing this episode. I'm Fernando Noodt. And to our listeners out there, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.